Big Gamer out here. How are you guys doing today? I'm super. Thanks for asking. Today, guys, I'm bringing you a little bit of gameplay from the little known horror game for PlayStation 4 called Kholat. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It is actually based on a Russian kind of true event that happened to some students in Russia, and this is the game adaptation of that. Loosely, obviously, they've got quite a bit of creative license here, but being a big fan of horror games in general and the genre, I thought I would bring you a quick buyer's guide for this, and it is quite cheap. And because of that, the shortcomings I'm going to kind of tell you about in a second aren't so bad. Now, I managed to pick this game up for about £20, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is sub $30 in the US. And for a PlayStation 4 game, it does come as a physical copy, which is a thing that I absolutely love, guys. I love a good physical copy. It's a decent price. Now, the game carries a 12 rating, which for a horror game might kind of you might come across as weird and might actually put you off buying the game. But don't be afraid of this. It's not the kind of game to show you lots of graphic violence. It's more atmospheric, and it kind of tackles things from a more psychological standpoint. Some people have called it a bit of a walking simulator, and this is fairly reminiscent of previous games. Like, imagine a less action focused Soma, for instance. It is a survival horror game to an extent. It's a survival game to an extent, I suppose. Based on a mountain where you will have to kind of travel from a base camp and take map bearings and use a compass, and tackle the mountain and the wind. And if you fall from a small distance, you can actually kill yourself in this game. As for the threat comes in the form of kind of like these astral kind of ghost spirits, and as you uncover the story through environmental storytelling and audio logs, you'll come across these spirits, and coming in contact with them will kill yourself as well. And there's some nice twists to do with the actual character you play, and also to do with what happened to the students that I won't want to divulge to you guys and ruin it for you now. But needless to say, it is being narrated by Sean Bean, so there is some decent voice acting in there. Now, the actual audio logs can be a little bit hit and miss, but with Sean Bean's voice narrating it does come across quite nicely. Now, the game's visuals kind of range anything from basic to quite pretty, and with the use of filters, and they've got some nice weather effects in there, it actually can look quite striking at times, especially for a game of this budget value. Now, why is this interesting to me? Well, first of all, before we get down to that, let me just say, if you're a fan of the genre, I do recommend picking this up. It is cheap, it is interesting, it's not going to set your world alight gameplay wise, but it is definitely worth experiencing. Now, this game, along with a few others, have kind of kickstarted almost like a revival or revolution in the horror genre. Now, it was a genre that was very well represented throughout the 90s and early 2000s, but it does seem to be one that's been left by the wayside the last few years, and I've seen a trend of these games coming back. I mean, we've obviously got key marquee titles like Silent Hills, even though it didn't actually come out, as obviously spurred on things like Allison Road. Resident Evil's obviously getting some in Resident Evil 7, almost like a reboot. But what interests me is the fact that a lot of these games are actually coming out in like a digital fashion or being released later on discs, and they're coming out at budget prices, and there's actually quite a lot of horror content out there now. Games like Layers of Fear, for instance, or a Soma, or Kholat here, even the release of Project Zero, or Fatal Frame, however you want to call it, onto the Wii U. I think there is almost like a resurgence of these horror games now, and if you are into the genre, it's been no better time to be into the genre, basically, for quite some time, going on 10 years now. So I'm hoping this is a sign of things to come. As a massive fan of the genre, and I'm hoping this can give me an opportunity to bring you guys more horror gameplay, because along with this game, a little bit of Resident Evil and Layers of Fear, I haven't been able to bring too much horror gameplay to my channel yet. But I am a massive fan of the genre, and I have collected survival horror games on dozens of different consoles, and at some point I would really like to do some kind of retrospective looks at the genre as a whole. And I don't mind even playing some of the lesser known games, or some of the quite awful games like the Wii version of Alone in the Dark that I covered recently. That was a poor port. But you know, for me, if it's part of the genre, I will actually play it no matter how bad it is. So hopefully there'll be plenty more buying guides coming along for you guys. So if you want me to bring you more survival horror content, if you want me to do more buying guides, then by all means drop a like, comment or subscribe, and I'll bring you more content, guys. Cheers.